Did you know that the global Muslim population has reached 1.9 billion in 2024, accounting for 25% of the world's total population of 8 billion? But why, you might ask, is this vast religious group facing growing intolerance in several countries across the world? Shockingly, in certain nations, Muslims are not only unwelcomed, but also persecuted through state policies, social hostility, and outright violence. What has led to this rising wave of animosity? In this video, we'll dive deep into the top 10 countries where Muslims are met with hostility, with emotional and curiosity-driven narratives that will leave you stunned. These are not just statistics, but real stories of human lives, facing exclusion every day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment to stay connected to these eye-opening truths. Number 10. Myanmar, also known as Burma, was once home to a peaceful coexistence of religious groups. But did you know that the government's restrictions against Muslims date back to 1982? In a country of 55 million people, Muslims make up just 4.3% of the population. Shockingly, despite their small numbers, the Rohingya Muslim community in Myanmar has faced systematic violence, discrimination, and exclusion. The situation turned catastrophic in 2017 when the military began a brutal crackdown that led to the mass displacement of Rohingya Muslims. Over 700,000 fled to neighboring Bangladesh. But why did the violence escalate so quickly? The government refuses to recognize them as citizens, branding them as illegal immigrants. Did you know that the Rohingya Muslims have lived in Myanmar for centuries, yet their rights are non-existent? The local Buddhist majority often views Muslims as a threat to national identity, accusing them of trying to Islamize Myanmar. By 2024, Muslims are still confined to refugee camps and deprived of basic rights, unable to return to their homes. Number 9. Slovakia. A picturesque country in Central Europe, presents itself as a defender of European Christian values. But did you know that Slovakia has officially refused to recognize Islam as a religion since 2016? Out of a population of 5.4 million, Muslims account for less than 0.2%. Why such resistance toward a group that represents such a small minority? Slovakia passed legislation preventing Islam from becoming an official religion, making it nearly impossible for Muslims to practice their faith publicly. But when did Muslims first arrive in Slovakia? Most of the Muslim community here traces its origins back to the 1990s when immigrants from Arab countries settled in the region. Despite their peaceful integration, the rise of anti-Islam sentiment surged in recent years. Did you know that in 2023, a public poll revealed that over 60% of Slovaks believe Islam is incompatible with their culture? The fear of losing Slovak identity has driven government policies, leaving Muslims marginalized and often forced to practice their religion in private. In 2024, no mosques exist in Slovakia, and Muslims find themselves isolated from the rest of society. Number 8. Angola. Located in southern Africa, made international headlines when it became one of the few countries to officially ban Islam. Did you know that since 2013, Islam has been illegal in Angola? Out of a population of 34 million, Muslims constitute less than 2%. But why was this harsh decision taken? Angola's government justified the ban by claiming it was part of their fight against extremist ideologies. However, many believe it is simply an effort to promote Angola's dominant Christian faith. Mosques have been demolished, and practicing Islam in public is forbidden. Did you know that Muslims first began arriving in Angola in the 1990s, primarily from West Africa? For a time, they were able to practice their faith without much interference. But starting in the early 2000s, the government began cracking down on Islamic practices, claiming they were foreign to Angolan culture. In 2024, the situation remains dire for Muslims, who must gather in secret to pray. Public opinion reflects the government's stance, with many Angolans viewing Islam as a foreign religion that threatens national unity. Number 7. Bhutan. The peaceful Himalayan kingdom, often associated with happiness and spirituality, harbors a lesser-known dark side when it comes to religious tolerance. Did you know that in 2024, Muslims make up a tiny 0.1% of Bhutan's population of 750,000? Despite their minuscule numbers, Muslims face significant restrictions on religious expression. Why does a country famous for promoting gross national happiness show such intolerance toward a religious minority? The government's drive to preserve Bhutanese culture has led to the marginalization of Islam, viewed as foreign and incompatible with the kingdom's Buddhist traditions. Muslim immigrants began arriving in Bhutan during the early 1900s, mainly for trade, but their presence remains hidden. Did you know that in 2018, the government imposed new restrictions on religious gatherings, forcing many Muslims to practice their faith in secrecy? By 2024, these limitations have only increased, with Muslims unable to build mosques or perform public prayers. Bhutanese society places a heavy emphasis on cultural purity, leaving little room for religious diversity. Number 6. Sri Lanka. Country of 22 million, was once a land where Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, and Muslims coexisted peacefully. But did you know that in 2024, Muslims make up about 10% of the population and face rising hostility? The turning point came after the Easter Sunday bombings in 2019, when anti-Muslim sentiment surged across the island. The blame placed on a small group of extremists quickly turned into widespread discrimination against the entire Muslim community. Did you know that in 2022, a survey revealed that over 45% of Sri Lankans held negative views of Muslims, fearing that they aimed to take over economically and culturally? This fear has led to attacks on mosques, boycotts of Muslim businesses, and restrictions on religious attire like the hijab. Muslims first began settling in Sri Lanka as traders in the 7th century, yet in 2024, they face growing violence and exclusion. Why has this happened in a country known for its diversity? Many believe that political actors have fanned the flames of religious nationalism to gain power, leaving Muslims in an increasingly precarious position. Number 5. India. Home to 1.4 billion people, is a land of religious diversity, but in recent years, its 200 million Muslims have increasingly been targeted. Did you know that hate crimes against Muslims surged by 40% since 2019? Why? Under the leadership of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Hindu nationalism has been on the rise. The government's Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 and the National Register of Citizens sparked fear among Muslims who were excluded and demonized. Shockingly, by 2024, Muslims in India face widespread discrimination in employment, housing, and education. Did you know that Muslim students are often segregated in schools and many mosques are under constant police surveillance? Muslims have been part of India's fabric for over a millennium, but under the current government, they are increasingly viewed as second-class citizens. The situation has led to a sense of fear and uncertainty among India's Muslim population, many of whom wonder if they have a place in their own country. Number 4. Central African Republic is a nation of 5 million, but its 10% Muslim population faces brutal persecution. Did you know that since 2013, Muslims in Central African Republic have been targeted by Christian militias, resulting in one of the most violent religious conflicts in Africa? Shockingly, by 2024, entire Muslim communities have been wiped out or displaced. Why such violence? The Central African Republic conflict is rooted in religious and ethnic divisions, with Muslims often accused of supporting rebel factions. Muslims first arrived in the Central African Republic centuries ago, but their presence has always been a source of tension. Did you know that over 80% of the Central African Republic Muslim population is now displaced, living in refugee camps or neighboring countries? Number 3. China, with its 1.4 billion citizens, has a Muslim population of about 22 million, largely composed of Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region. Did you know that since 2017, China has been running re-education camps where over 1 million Uyghurs are detained? Shockingly, these camps are part of China's broader plan to assimilate the Muslim minority by force, a policy that continues in 2024. Why such extreme measures? The Chinese government claims these actions are necessary to fight extremism, but critics argue that it's a thinly veiled attempt to erase Uyghur culture. Did you know that Uyghurs are often forced to abandon Islamic practices, such as fasting during Ramadan or wearing traditional clothing? Muslims have been in China for centuries, but today they are being pushed out of public life. The future for Uyghur Muslims remains grim as China tightens its grip on the region. Number 2. Japan, with a population of 125 million, is home to fewer than 10,000 Muslims. Despite its modern and peaceful image, Japan has a long history of resisting foreign religions. Did you know that Japan only has a handful of mosques and most of them face local opposition? Shockingly, public surveys show that 63% of Japanese people believe that Islam is incompatible with their way of life. Why? Japan has a homogeneous society and a deeply ingrained fear of cultural dilution. Muslims first arrived in Japan as traders and students in the early 20th century, but they remain a tiny, misunderstood community. By 2024, Muslims in Japan continue to face quiet discrimination, with employers often refusing to hire them and landlords denying them housing. Did you know that in 2019, a mosque in Japan was forced to close because local residents protested against its presence? Number 1. North Korea, with its 26 million people, is perhaps the most closed-off country in the world. Did you know that Islam, along with all other religions, is completely banned in North Korea? Since the establishment of the state in 1948, the regime has outlawed all religious practices, including Islam. Why such extreme measures? The North Korean government enforces a state ideology that leaves no room for faith. By 2024, any Muslim presence in North Korea is underground and illegal. Did you know that practicing any religion in North Korea, including Islam, can result in death? The regime's totalitarian grip ensures that Muslims and anyone else with religious beliefs have no place in this brutal society. Did these stories shock you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to stay informed about more hidden truths. Thanks for watching.